Hi, and welcome to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 277, and today's date is January 30th, 2014, and the title of this episode is U.S. Intel Suggests an Attack on American Soil is Now Intensifying. And, what do we really know? We understand the central bankers, the U.S. government, their goals are exactly the same. They have not changed one bit. They want to get into Syria, and they want to get into Iran to prop up the U.S. dollar for a little bit longer. And this is their whole entire mission. They tried back in August of 2013 with a false flag event saying that Assad has used chemical weapons. They couldn't prove anything. The whole entire thing fell apart. They had to use the back door of saying, okay, if he gets rid of the chemical weapons, we won't strike, and the whole thing was put to rest. But we knew at that point that they were going to try again. And here we are today. They are about to do the same exact thing. They have these ridiculous Geneva II talks, and the only reason they have these talks is because they want to get rid of Assad. But of course, Assad is not going to just step down and say, okay, you know what, put in your puppet regime, I'm out of here. It's just not going to happen. And these talks are actually going nowhere. So now they will be taking this to the next level, and we will get into that, and we'll see what the new U.S. intel has to talk about what's going on here, and we'll get into that a little bit later in this report. But let's get into the economic collapse news, and we're going to start off with the initial jobless claims, and again, they are a miss. The initial claims rose around 19,000 this week, missed expectations by the most in 6 weeks, and jumped to the same levels seen 6 months ago. So what are we seeing here? Well, unemployment is going to come down because we have those people that were on the unemployment extension fell off. So now we're going to see unemployment probably drop to around 5.9% or so, unless they do something else and something else changes. But right now, that's what it's looking like, and they're going to, come out and say that the economy is recovering, look how great everything is, and the unemployment is just going to drop. Now, I talk about this a lot. Pending home sales. Home sales, mortgage applications, builders, new construction, it's all coming apart right now. Pending home sales collapsed around 8.7% month over month, the worst since May 2010, missing by the most in over 3 years. Home prices rising faster than income is also giving pause to some potential buyers, because guess what? We have to use common sense here. Since the last crash, which was in 2008, 40% of the American population's wealth was stripped away. They have foreclosures on the books of banks. The Fed has been continually purchasing those toxic real estate securities. And what else do we know? Well, most of the people are unemployed or underemployed. Most of the people have bad credit, and they're not going out purchasing these homes. What else do we know? Well, we know the youth of America can't find work, and they're still living with their parents because there are just no jobs out of there. And most of the college graduates are coming out of college. They have these ridiculous part-time jobs or jobs that are not in their field, and they're not making the money that they should be making at this time. And as time goes on, these people will not be able to purchase homes. And also what we're seeing is fewer Americans sign contracts to buy previously occupied homes. People just don't have the money, because we have to remember 60% of these homes that are being purchased are by hedge funds, investment companies. They're taking them and they're either renting them out if they can, or they're just holding on to them waiting for the prices to go up, and then they're trying to unload them. But guess what? They're finding out there is no one to unload them to, because the American people are just not there, because we have a plunge in mortgage applications. They're down by 66%, and we understand why they are down, because people cannot afford these houses. And this is why they brought back the 100% financing, the adjustable rate mortgages. And we also know that all the main mortgage departments and the huge banks have been laying off thousands of people because they already knew that the housing market was coming to the peak and it was headed downward. And this is what is happening right now. And of course, they're going to blame this on the cold weather. They're going to say, oh, it was because the sky was blue and snow was coming down. But in December, if you look around and you look at the map of the temperatures, it's not the case. So weather really had nothing to do with this. And they were out there saying that the broad-based declines by region suggest that colder than average weather was likely not the primary driver, given slightly warmer than average temperatures on the Pacific coast in December. So that whole weather thing is completely false and not true. The reason why things are falling apart is because people just don't have the money to buy it. They don't have the credit to buy it. They don't have the jobs to buy it. It's basic common sense. That's why, let's think about it. That's why retail sales have gone down. This is why back in October, November, when I was talking about retail sales and how retail sales was going to be terrible in December, well, guess what? They were. Stores are closing because they cannot continually operate if no one is buying their merchandise. We saw automobile manufacturers channel stuffing the dealerships, and they had about 76 to 80 days worth of cars on their lots, hoping that people would come by and purchase them. Guess what? They did not. And right now what we're seeing is a decline in GDP to 3.2%. And for the whole entire year of 2013, the GDP was 1.9%, down from 2.8% in 2012. Wouldn't you think that would be better? Because the unemployment has been coming down the entire year of 2013, which was much lower than 2012. You would think retail sales would be better, housing would be better, and GDP would be better. And now you see why they have to continually manipulate and change these numbers. Recently, they changed the calculation to inflation. Recently, they changed the calculation to GDP. They included things like research and development. They went all the way back to 1929 and went forward to make sure the GDP numbers looked really great. They changed how unemployment is calculated, and you can tell that all these numbers are completely manipulated. But if we look at the Baltic Dry Index, we see it collapses by 50% in December. And again, this gives us an indication on how things are going. As the Baltic Dry Index drops, we can see we are headed for something bad. And for those people who don't know what the Baltic Dry Index is, changes in the Baltic Dry Index can give investors insight into global supply and demand trends. This change is often considered a leading indicator of future economic growth. If the Baltic Dry Index is going up, we're going to see fantastic growth. If it's going down, something is lurking in the background, and usually that is that people aren't purchasing, people don't have the money, and we're heading towards a recession/depression. And this is what we're seeing right now. Now, in my other reports, I reported on countries that are dropping the dollar, and I listed all the countries. One of the last ones was Nigeria. They decided to go with the yuan, and we have to remember that Kenya is now the clearinghouse for the yuan, and here we have another African country, Zimbabwe. They had that hyperinflation problem where they were printing money like crazy. So what they decided to do is they decided to use the US dollar, and that became the official currency for all government transactions. And now what are they doing? Well, they're getting rid of the US dollar. What they're doing is they are moving towards the Chinese yuan. The government just announced it. They will use the yuan, and it will be the legal tender of Zimbabwe, and every single African nation is going to follow, and we're going to see many countries stop using the dollar. Now, I said this in my many reports. When these countries stop using the dollar and they're not holding on to them and they don't keep them in reserve, where do they go? Well, they come back to the U.S., and we're seeing this problem all around the world. And if we look back to 2001, Back then, the dollar share of global reserves was around 75%. Today, it's 60% and dropping. So we can see what is happening. And this drop is happening faster and faster now. It's picking up speed. Many nations have already made deals with the Chinese to use the yuan in bilateral trade, and we're seeing nations drop the dollar. Now, if these countries in the Middle East and the countries in Africa start to drop the dollar, we are going to be in for a huge, huge collapse, and we know it is coming because we can see the turmoil in the Middle East. We can see what's happening in Africa, and many of these nations saying, listen, we have to be safe here. We need to hedge our bets here, and we need to join up with the yuan. And since Kenya is the clearinghouse for the yuan, we might as well do this right now and start converting our dollars into yuans and changing the amount of currency we hold in reserves. Now, there is a World Bank exec chief economist who's saying he's calling for the end of the dollar as the reserve currency. And we can see why this is happening. And just like I mentioned, the people holding the dollar has dropped, and now the World Bank former chief economist wants to replace the U.S. dollar with a single global super currency, saying it will create a more stable global financial system. The dominance of the greenback is the root cause of global financial and economic crisis. The solution to this is to replace the national currency with a global currency, and we can see how this is going to proceed forward and how this is going to end up. This is going to end up not well for anyone. This is why the central banker U.S. governments are positioning all their military assets all across the world, especially in Asia, because China is a threat to the dollar. And they will start this war any way they can. They don't care. And I think it's going to start in the Middle East and then spread to other countries. And I believe this is how it's actually going to start. Now, we understand once the dollar starts collapsing, we're going to have problems all over the place here. And I mentioned this in my couple of reports back, where they had these devices that will stop and stall your car. This is to capture people if they're trying to get away. And right now, the EU is developing a secret plan to give the police the power to control cars by switching the engine off remotely. And again, we have to remember, most of the cars in the United States have the black box. They already have the ability to do this. They already have the ability to take control. But the European Union is secretly developing a remote stopping device to be fitted to all cars that would allow the police to disable vehicles at the flick of a switch from a control room. This is very dangerous. Confidential documents from a committee of senior EU police officers who hold their meetings in secret have set out a plan entitled Remote Stopping Vehicles as part of the wider law enforcement surveillance and tracking measures. Now, we can understand why the EU is doing this, because the EU, all the European nations are having a very rough time, and they see what's in the future. They see a collapse coming. They see rioting. They see people driving vehicles all over the place, and they want the ability to just shut off people's automobiles at a flick of a switch. Okay. Now, in Tunisia, what's happening is a new government was sworn in, and this new government is a puppet government for the central bankers, because what has happened now is that since this new government, this new friendly government, has been sworn in, the International Monetary Fund released more than $500 million in support for the new government, and now they're going to begin the process of putting this country into debt, and they have complete control of that country. Now, in Taiwan, the army is deploying 10,000 troops ahead of the vote because they want to make sure that the puppet regime stays in power. They do not want any surprises because, again, the United States central bankers back the puppet regime in Thailand. Now, in Ukraine, they have other problems. They're on the verge of a civil war, and right now, The president is threatening sanctions against the Ukrainian government. Again, this protesting, this rioting came about when the Ukraine government decided to go with Russia instead of the EU because the central bankers, the U.S. government, the NATO nations want the Ukraine included in in NATO because it is in a strategic location. Plus, they want to extend their debt further into this country, and it is a great location and position for the upcoming war. And this is why they're doing this, and this is why they created these riots. The whole thing is getting out of control, and the Ukrainians government is saying we are on a brink of civil war, and right now it looks like the government might be stepping down, and we might have another government step into place. And right now, Russia, the emergency loan to the Ukraine is on hold right now because they want to see what government is being put into there. Is it a puppet government of the United States? And we will know right away if it is a puppet government, because what will happen is all of a sudden they will switch, they will join the EU, and the Ukraine will join NATO. This is how we will know if something happened. Now, we understand that the central bankers, U.S. government, like to demonize and provoke different countries. They're provoking Russia, they're provoking China, they're provoking North Korea, Iran, Syria, you name it, they're doing it. And they like to demonize these countries. So what's happening right now is the United States notified NATO allies earlier this month of Russia of Russian tests of a new missile that can be in violation of a nuclear disarmament treaty. The weapon, a ground-based cruise missile, has allegedly been tested repeatedly since 2008 and is considered by senior U.S. officials to have clearly violated the Intermediate Range Nuclear Force treaty, and this is what is happening right now. They're just pushing their agenda forward, and they're continually demonizing Russia. They're demonizing China because in preparation, the people have to believe that these countries are the enemy of the United States once we get into war, and this is what's happening right now. Now, there is a report, and I've said this many times, but this report has just come out, that they are losing control of the Middle East. They're losing control in Iraq. They're losing control in Lebanon, in Libya, in Yemen. And right now this report came out, and it says that the Iraqi military and security forces remain ill-equipped to battle the Sunni revolt, the report said. And this report said that the Iraq lacked the army and police manpower to quell the al-Qaeda direct Sunni revolt. And we have to remember the al-Qaeda are the people rising up to take their country back. And the report determined that Iraq was on the verge of a civil war. And these reports are coming out now because we know what's going to happen. The United States is going to say we left them, they're not equipped to handle this. And of course, they're already sending military equipment. They're sending troops to train the Iraqis. And sooner or later, war is going to break out there because the United States will have to get involved to push the rising people back because they don't have the troops and the manpower there to keep the amount of people that are rising up. And we can see how this is building up right now. Now, James Clapper was in an intelligence briefing, and he's saying that Tehran has the capacity to break out to a bomb if it wishes, and now has all the technical infrastructure to produce nuclear weapons should it make the political decision to do so. And they are building this up because if they cannot infiltrate the Iranian bank system, where the central bankers if they can't take control of their banking system, they will resort to some type of false flag event to carry forward what they need to get carried forward, and that is to get the government of Iraq out of there and to put in a puppet regime, the same thing they're doing with Syria. And of course, They're doing this because they need to prop up the dollar. They see what's happening all across the globe. They see what is going to happen if they do not do something at this point. And their backs are against the wall at this time, and they really need to do something. Now, of course, the State Department is out there saying that the military option is still on the table to attack Syria. They want to make this clear that we know we have the peace talks. We know we're sending aid and military assets to the rebels in Syria. Of course, we're doing this in secrecy and behind closed doors while we're in peace talks, and we understand what is really going on here. And they have never taken the military option off the table with regards to Syria. It has always been on the table. Their plan has never changed. And right now, this goes on to say that the U.S. slammed Syria Thursday for failing to meet its pledge to surrender its chemical weapons for destruction, calling it an open-ended delaying of the disarmament process as means of renegotiating the deal they cut last fall. They are blaming Assad for not getting the chemical weapons out of the country. And we knew this was going to happen. We knew they weren't going to carry this through because what's happening is the rebels are blocking the roads. They cannot get the chemical weapons out. There is too much fighting going on, and this is the problem in this area. Now, I talked a lot about a doomsday cyber attack, and the reason why I continually talk about this because they are building the case. They've been building this for almost 3 years now, that our power infrastructure is going to hit, our financial institutions are going to get hit, banks are going to close down, the lights are going to go out. We had Janet Napolitano actually say this to us, not if but when. And of course, today we have Attorney General Eric Holder out there saying the U.S. hasn't done enough to prepare for cyber attacks. I don't want to be an alarmist, but I think the concern that you have expressed over the years is well-founded, Holder said to Senator Sheldon Whithouse, who asked him a question. This nation needs to be afraid of where we could be after a cyber attack, Holder said. He expects the threat to increase. Our nation is at risk. Our infrastructure is at risk. And we as a nation, I think, have not adequately responded to it, he said. It is only going to get worse. The danger is only going to be heightened because they understand they are going to carry out a cyber attack on the United States. I've said this many times. Everything is being prepared for this moment because their backs are against the wall. They are losing control of the Middle East. They are losing control of Africa. Nations in Africa, with their own free will, are dumping the dollar. The Middle East, if these al-Qaeda factions, which are the people rising up against the puppet regime, take over these countries, they will have a huge problem on their hands, and they understand this. This is why they are preparing for this next event, which will include probably chemical, it could include biological, it could include a dirty bomb, and most likely, almost without a shadow of a doubt, it will include a cyber attack, and we can see this coming right now. And Clapper, again, was giving a briefing to the Intelligence Committee, and right now the U.S. intelligence community, in its first such assessment, has warned of a loss of America's Arab allies. The intelligence community said the Gulf Cooperation Council could be the first Arab allies to move away from the United States. Some of the transitioning governments are more skeptical than before the Arab Spring about cooperating with the United States. Clapper said the threat of Arab shift came amid an increasing presence of al-Qaeda in the Middle East, particularly Iraq, Lebanon, and Syria. And of course, al-Qaeda are, depending on which country, in Iraq and Lebanon. The al-Qaeda are the people who are fighting for their country, and this is what they're saying. And if you change the words here, Clapper said the threat of Arab shift came amid an increasing presence of the people rising up in the Middle East to overthrow the puppet government in these countries. This is what they're actually saying, and this is what they're really worried about. So what are they doing? They are building the case of a false flag event. Because right now, Homeland Security reported Thursday, today, that Syria has become the new battleground against al-Qaeda, with the international terrorist organization using bases in the country to train Western troops, many of them Americans. They're setting up training camps and training Western recruits. Now, why are they doing this? Well, intelligence reports say there is a threat of a terrorist attack on U.S. soil by al-Qaeda-linked groups based in Syria. They are making the case right now of what is going to unfold. Fears of an attack were discussed Wednesday by the Senate Intelligence Committee. Its possible source is believed to be the al-Qaeda-affiliated al-Nusra Front, which the Director of National Intelligence, James Clapper, said that what's going on there may be in some respects a new fatter force, and the attraction of these foreign fighters is very, very worrisome, because they could be coming here to America to attack, and they are from Syria. Clapper said he still believes the main danger still comes from the embattled Syrian president. Clapper said that the Assad wants to produce lethal biological agents and quietly get them ready for use via conventional weapon systems. So we can see what they are actually doing at this point. They are laying it out, letting everyone know that there are terrorists in Syria right now. And this is why we had all of this terrorist alerts. Al-Qaeda is in the country. There are lone wolves running around. Some of them are bomb makers. We can't keep track of them. These militants are coming back, and they're radicalized, and they're running around America. We can't find them, and we're very worried. And this is why they said their biggest concern to the MetLife Stadium for Super Bowl are homegrown radicalized terrorists that might do something there in the stadium. Now, I don't know if it's going to happen at that point, but they've been building and building this for a specific reason, because if they cannot get Assad out, the next false flag event will occur here on U.S. soil. They need to do this because they see what is happening around the world. The economy is declining. It is not getting better, and we know this by the facts, by the real numbers. We can see it with our own eyes. It is not working. The stock market is teetering right now with its up and down at the top. We've seen this back in 1929. We've seen this back in 2008, and here we are right now. The Fed is now starting to taper and remove, and the pumping into the market is starting to slow, because they realize what they need to do next. They need to bring this event to the U.S. soil to get the war started. And this is what they're doing right now. They are pushing this forward. They are ready. This is about to happen. And everyone needs to be prepared. And I've said this many, many times, and hopefully everyone has not stopped preparing, because I know back in the fall when things fell apart, people said, oh, it's all over with, they're not going to do it, but it was never over with. They were building they came up with a new plan, they're building it up, and here we are again at the same exact point with Syria and Assad. Nothing has changed. We're just at a different time. We're now in the winter of 2014 instead of the summer fall of 2013. But they understand many different things now. They understand that any type of terrorist attack across the ocean, the people have no effect. They don't care. So they realize that, and they will fix that mistake that they did last time, because this time they will bring it here. And they are telling you that. They are telling you this is what they are worried about. They are building the case. And they already told us that the al-Qaeda faction that's going to, do this false flag event comes from Syria. They've already been building the case of the Syrian electronic army, and I hope everyone has not stopped preparing. I hope everyone has been stockpiling water. I hope everyone has been stockpiling food, who have been taking money out of the banks, because when the cyber attack hits, you don't want to have money in the banks. I hope people have been investing in gold. If you can't afford gold, invest in silver. Listen, they brought the prices down for you. I mean, they couldn't make it any easier. They've been bringing the prices down, and they're saying, listen, buy silver, buy gold, because we're going to bring this whole system down, and we're making it cheaper for you. That's the way I see it. I hope people have purchased extra medication. Those people who are diabetic, those people who have a heart problem, those people have any other type of illness. I hope you got the medicines that you need. I hope that you got the toiletries that you need, the batteries that you need, the other medicines like aspirin or anything else that you might need. At this time, just continue to prep, continually stock up on what you need, because they are telling us what they're going to do. They're telling us that there's going to be a cyber attack. They're telling us that they're going to shut down the financial system. They're telling us they're going to have the infrastructure be hit and the lights are going to go out. They are telling us that there's going to be some type of an attack on U.S. soil. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially, please, be prepared. Thanks a lot.